Welcome to Tulsa Titans, highlighting local executives who are making an impact. Today, I've got Alisa Henin. Alisa, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Kellen. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. It's a beautiful day, so I'm ready to get some great content here and then go enjoy some weather.
I'll do the best I can for you.
So you're the firm administrator for Rhodes Hieronymus, Jones, Tucker, and Gable. Can you start just by telling us a little bit about yourself?
I've been in human resources, 20 or 25 years, mostly in higher education. 3 years ago, I made the move to work for a law firm to be their firm administrator. I do human resources and keep our insurance policies going and keep our employment policies going. I love it. I love what I do. I love human resources. Love it. And it's just a joy to work where I work. I work with people who have values of integrity. You know, people talk about all the lawyer jokes and they chase ambulances and things like that. But I don't know those people. My firm's been in business 90 years, and their integrity and the respect they have for others, it just makes it a joy to work there. It really is.
Culture is key. And yeah, you're exactly right. Law firms don't have that said about them in the culture realm. You have such a unique testimony in the last season that you've walked through. And so what I wanted to do is just give you an opportunity to share. And one of the things I love to ask executives, because life's not always good. There are seasons with family, there's seasons at work that are just, they're hard, but they shape us. And so what was that season for you? What got you through it? And then just tell us a little bit about that story.
Sure. And I'm fortunate because the place where I work, I mean, they were well aware of the situation that I went through. When I interviewed, I told them about it, and from the very beginning, and they have been nothing but supportive ever since. So my season was one of domestic violence, which is not something I would have admitted to a long time ago, because it didn't feel like domestic violence. It felt very personal. I wasn't someone who was abused on a daily basis. I wasn't married to someone who physically harmed me during our marriage. So I never really saw it as domestic violence, but on the other side of it, it obviously was. I was married 21 years to my high school sweetheart. We had two great sons, and like a lot of marriages do that are young, made when you're young, we went our separate ways in our 40s, and our sons were pretty much out of the house and on their own, and we each pursued different lives. I spent the first year trying to adjust like you do, you know, a new job and by yourself and that kind of thing. After a year or so, I started dating, and I met a man named Randy, and I met him online. I know it's like a collective groan. Everyone says, "Oh, online, you know, what were you thinking?" But I have to tell you, you know, back in 2008, if you were a busy professional, and at the time I was human resource director for the career tech system here in Oklahoma. If you were busy and in your job and you didn't want to date someone from work or date someone from your church, you really didn't have a lot of options. So I did go to online, and I played it smart. I mean, I had friends check him out. We ran a background check. I had a U.S. Attorney General. He even went in, he was a friend, and he went to make sure he was really divorced. You know, I didn't want to go down that road. Not even a traffic ticket. So we dated for 2 or 3 years, and we married in 2011. And the first 2 years of our marriage went about like anyone else's first 2 years of marriage. We volunteered at church together. He met my family. My grandson fell in love with them. It went pretty normal. During the third year of our marriage, he decided to go to work out of town. He was in construction. And he said, "They're putting in a pipeline in South Dakota. I can make a lot of money doing that. We can boost our retirement." I didn't like the idea of a long distance marriage. So we agreed that we would try it for 6 months, see how it was going, another year, see how it was going. And at the end of 2 years, he would come home. So we started down that path. I kept in touch. Again, the marriage was going fine. And then he came home in 2015 for Christmas. He went to leave in February of 2016 to go back up north, South Dakota. And his cell phone rang. And the ringtone was, "I Got You, Babe." And I don't know if people remember the old Sonny and Cher show, but that was their song, "I Got You, Babe." So I said, "Hey, who's Babe?" And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. And it kept ringing. And I said, well, she really wants to talk to you. And he was getting ready to leave. And so I said, well, don't you just go ahead and leave and work out what you need to, and we can talk about this later. So, and he had been a little bit odd when he was home anyway, a little bit distant. So I suspected something wasn't quite right. In March, we were going to meet for spring break. I was going to meet him halfway. He didn't want to do that after all. And then in April, we had a phone conversation where we talked about fidelity and what that means to each of us. And we did not have the same idea of what fidelity is. And he then broke down on the phone and he said, I am a bad person. I've done some bad things. You're a good person. I think you need to get as far away from me as you can. I said, well, I'm in Oklahoma and you're in South Dakota. So that's a lot of distance. And he said, well, I think you should file for divorce. And so I said, okay, but that's what you want to do. So I got the paperwork together and waited for him to come home. I filed in April and he didn't come home until July. And he came home in July, packed the rest of his things, and I left the house for 2 days. So, just take whatever you want. And it was over the 4th of July weekend. So just take whatever you want. And I hope you have a good life. I don't have any hard feelings, just have a good life. And in August, he started trying to call and wanting to be friends and have conversation. And I just wasn't ready to do that yet. And our pastor called me one day on his behalf. And he said, I think he's had a change of heart. He loves the Lord. He loves you. Do you really see any harm in talking with him? So I decided I didn't. I mean, I have forgiveness in my heart. I don't hold anything against him. I just knew we weren't going to reconcile. So we spent September, October, and part of November talking on the phone, and I mean like every 2 or 3 days, how was your day and how are things going at work and that kind of thing. Nothing intimate at all. Then in November, he started asking me to do some really odd things like you would ask a spouse to do. He asked me to put him back on my car insurance, put his truck on my car insurance. He asked me to contact his first wife and get the title for his truck. He asked me to put him back on my checking account and send him a debit card. And I explained to him that we weren't married. We weren't going to be married anymore. It wasn't my choice, but now that it was done, it needed to be this way. And he got really angry. And I said, I feel like this is, maybe we just need to part ways. I mean, I can tell you think we're going to get back together and we're not. And I don't think this is fair. So I cut all communication with him. By the 1st of December, I started finding notes in my house. Like I would go to put on a pair of pants for work and there'd be a little yellow sticky note that said, hope you have a great day. I would pull a box of Ziploc bags down from my cabinet and pull a bag out and there'd be another note. Again, pretty benign kind of notes like, hello, beautiful. Hope you're having a nice day. Don't forget I love you. I would find these notes. I found one morning in my Bible, my Jesus Calling devotional. I opened and it was there. So I thought he had left those there in July when he was in the house. I was just now finding them. When I was commuting at that time, I was working as the HR director for NSU. I was commuting an hour from Broken Arrow to Tahlequah. So I wasn't home much. So I thought, well, I'm just now finding these. Then he started calling and I ignored his phone calls. And then in December, everything went quiet. So I thought, okay, well, he has made a life with whoever he's with and he's accepted that we both moved on. But that wasn't the case. I would find out later that those 2 days in July when I left to allow him privacy to pack, he actually had a key made to the back door of my home and was letting himself in my home while I was at work. In January, I was robbed. Someone broke into my home and took, all they took was my jewelry. And that was him. We found out later that was him. He admitted that. Towards the end of January, I scheduled a home security installation. They needed to tie that to my cell phone. So I decided this is a great time to just change my cell phone number because he was still calling constantly. And he had started a countdown to my birthday in February. And it was a little bit creepy. I mean, at that point, I wasn't sleeping a whole lot. It was just an odd thing. Friends started asking me if I'm okay. My mom started asking me if I was okay. And I would just tell them that I was stressed, had a lot going on at work, and which was true. I had a lot going on at work. So I changed my cell phone, put in a security system. February the 6th, I'm at work. At this time, I'm the HR director at Rogers State University. My phone goes off and my home alarm is going off. They call and they ask me, do we need to stop the police from going? And I said, no, send them. No, I'm not home. I get home and the neighbors tell me, they describe him and his truck and told me that he had come and used his key to get in the side door and walked in my kitchen. And so when he opened the kitchen door from the garage, that's when the alarm went off. The police talked with me. They gave me a family safety center card here that's here in Tulsa. They suggested I go talk to someone there. I told them that I was going to change the locks and replace my security light and would see what happened. I figured the alarm scared him off. So I went to get lights that night at Lowe's. And when I came back, he's standing in my yard. He ambushed me in the yard. He told me he just wanted to talk. And yes, he had stolen my jewelry, that he had a key to my house. I told him to leave me alone. He was scaring me. And he said, well, in that case, he was going back to South Dakota. So I told him that's fine. He needed to go live his life. Then I called 911 as he was leaving. And when the police came, they gave me yet another family safety center card. They told me if I didn't file a protective order, that they couldn't do anything about him coming to my house. Now, the house is in my name. He had lived in it just briefly during the 2 years I was in it. So I didn't understand. I mean, we're divorced. I don't understand why they can't ask him to leave, but they told me they can't. Unless you have a no trespassing sign up, unless you tell them they can't come back, they said there's nothing we can do. He can come back. So the next day I went to the Family Safety Center and I got a protective order. And what you do with the protective order is you get an emergency order, and that's good for 30 days, but they have to serve him somewhere. And I didn't know where he was living. So I made copies. I put a copy in my glove box. I put a copy in my desk at work. Excuse me. We have allergies in Oklahoma. I gave a copy to our campus police officers. And I gave a photo of him to them and a photo of my coworker, or to my coworker. And I asked anyone that saw him to please call campus police. That I really didn't think he would harm anyone else, but he wants to talk to me, and I don't want to talk to him. It took 3 weeks before we saw him again. He was at Rogers State University hiding on campus. He parked his truck across the street, had a backpack on, to disguise himself as a student. And he was hiding behind buildings and trash dumpsters and that kind of thing. So when I pulled up in our parking lot, he came out in front of my car, and that's when I saw him. And he wanted to talk, wanted me to roll my window down, wanted me to talk to him. So I rolled the window down a little bit. He asked me to get in the car. I told him he couldn't get in my car. I pulled into a space because my coworker was pulling in. She had the picture of him. She called campus police. They came and served him with a protective order. They came and talked to me afterwards, and they said he took it really well. He understands you don't want to talk with him. He's very at peace with that. I don't think you're going to have any more issues. And that was middle of February. We showed up for the protective order hearing at the end of February. He was there, I was there, and an advocate from the Family Safety Center came with me. And when it was our turn, he would not accept the protective order. So I asked that it be enforced for 2 years and instead of a permanent one, and he would not accept that. He said he didn't want to surrender his guns that he had, and you have to do that with a protective order. He said he wouldn't do that. So I'm out in the hallway with my advocate. He is represented by a public defender. She comes out in the hall. And she said, he's not going to accept this. You're going to have a hearing. And I said, well, what do I do? And that's when, and I had filed a protective order through the safety center. I didn't have an attorney. And the advocate said, I think you need to get an attorney for the hearing. And so I turned to his attorney and I said, I'll get an attorney for the hearing and it'll be set next month. And she said, in the meantime, do you have a safety plan? And I said, a safety plan? And she said, yes. And I said, you're his attorney. She said, right. I'm asking you, do you have a safety plan? And I said, yes. Do you have a safety plan? And so I asked this young woman attorney, I said, I hope that you're not giving him food or money or a ride because you could be in danger. And she said she realized that. So the next month, I did not attend the hearing. I had an attorney by then, and I was seeing a counselor by then. And the attorney called me and she said he's agreed to 24 months. And if he doesn't violate it, then it'll be dropped. So I said, fine. She said, you did all the legwork on this, so I'm going to give you a refund. She gave me $250 back from the retainer I'd given her. Most amazing attorney I've ever met. And I took that money and I bought a revolver. Atwoods was having a sale, and I don't know people's views on firearms, especially with the recent shooting at St. Francis. I mean, here in Tulsa, St. Francis campus 2 days ago, there was a mass shooting in one of our doctor's buildings, and I wear pink today for those people. I mean, that is not the purpose of firearms, in my opinion. But I did need the protection, so I purchased one for protection. And everything was quiet. The rest of the month of March, all of April, everything was quiet. They told me he had told the judge he was moving back north and that he would never be in this area again. But that was a lie. On April 23rd, we had Easter at my house. It was late that year because my daughter-in-law works in the medical field, and that was her day off. So we had it a week late. That was on a Sunday. We found out later he was hiding in bushes behind my house, and the entire time we were all in the backyard with the grandson hunting Easter eggs, that he was actually present with the weapon. 2 days later, on a Tuesday night, I came home from work. I pull up to the stop sign near my house. I check my house alarm. It's not been disturbed. I turn the alarm off. I open my garage door. I close the garage door. I get out of the car and go in the house. And as I approach the living room I just gotten a puppy, a watchdog. It's a Morkie. I know they're not ferocious, but she's a noisemaker. She's still a noisemaker. I picked her up to take her outside, and that's when the abduction started. He tased me. If you've ever been tased, you know the feeling. If you haven't, it's a unique sensation. You feel like your insides are just coming out. You hear the pop before you feel the tase. And I don't know how. The taser he had was 5 times more forceful than the ones that the police officers use today. That came out later in trial. But by the grace of God, I stood up and started pulling the tasers out of me. I had a barb in my wrist, one in my spine, and one in my hip, and I began pulling those out. I turned around, and he's in camouflage with the taser pointed at me and his Smith & Wesson pointed at me. And he's yelling at me to get down or he's going to tase me again. So I did what, anyone with common sense would do. I just got down on the floor and started begging him not to kill me. A lot of yelling, a lot of blame. He had me lay down on my stomach. He used zip ties on my wrist and on my ankles and then wrapped them in duct tape. I don't know if he thought I was Houdini or what, but there was no way I was going to get out of the zip ties anyway. But that's what he did, and put my hands behind my back. And as I was sitting there, I could feel the blood from the barb in my back. So he didn't want any blood present. And so when I told him I was bleeding, he came and cut my blouse from the hem to the neck so that he could open it, and took a towel to wipe the blood up. At that time, he had to move my wrist to the front. So at least I had my hands in front of me at that time, so he could do that. We spent the next, from 6 o'clock that night to 2 in the morning, we spent the next 8 hours. I really don't know how to describe it to people. It's when you have someone who's not in their right mind, you can't talk with them. There's no discussion. It's a lot of yelling and screaming. I did just a lot of listening. I didn't say a whole lot. If he asked me a question and I answered, he would tell me I was lying. So I just stopped answering him, which made him even angrier. He told me he was going to kill me. He told me he was going to kill himself at one time. Then he was going to kill me and kill himself. Then finally he said, I'm not going to kill anyone. I just want some time to talk with you and then I'll leave. So I said, all right. And so he talked and I listened. And then at 2 a.m, that's when he told me that we were leaving the house. He said he was going to kill himself and wanted me to be there when he did it. And I refused. I told him if he was going to kill me, then he would have to do it right there in the house. I wasn't going to have people wondering what happened to me. And he said, no, I would be fine, but that I was going with him. And if I didn't go willingly, he would tase me again and take me anyway. So I went with him. He put me in the back of my car and drove the car up to Walmart where his truck was. I should probably tell you how he got in my house. If you have a security system and cameras, you have to wonder how someone gets past those things. I have some pictures of my house. My back bedroom, he actually took a skill saw and cut a hole the size of his shoulder width. And he climbed in my back bedroom and boarded it back up, pulled the board back up, and actually spent the day duct tape and painting that so you couldn't tell he had done anything on the wall. He thought it through very, very carefully. As he would tell me later, he had months to plan it. So anyway, he takes me from in my car up to Walmart, a mile away where he's parked his truck, and goes to put me in his truck, and I refuse to get in the truck. In the car, I had taken thank you notes out of the seat pocket in my car and wrote my name and my tag number, and he was taking me on 2 or 3 different pieces of paper and shoved them down in the seat pocket. I thought if someone finds my car, I at least want people to know I didn't go willingly. I mean, Kellen, at this point, I know something horrible is going to happen to me. I'm either going to be taken far, far away and never come back, or I'm going to be killed. So I didn't want to be one of those. I didn't want my family to be one of those families that has to wonder what happened. I just refused to do that. So I put those notes in my seat pocket. He went to take me out of the car and told me to get in the back of his truck. And I refused. I told him if he wanted me in the back of his truck, he'd have to put me there. And he did. He broke 2 ribs doing it, but he did. Once I'm laying in the back of the cab of his truck, he's unloading things out of my trunk. I find out later it's things like my passport, my tax returns, medication I take. He had basically packed all of these things. I tried the door in the back of the cab and I could tell that I could move the lock. So I knew I could open the door and throw myself out if I needed to. So I thought once we get on the road, I'll do that when I see a car. I mean, better to have a broken bone than be dead, right? But at 2:30 in the morning, there is no traffic. So I laid in the back of this cab with blankets piled on me. We stopped at the toll gate. He was taking me to Owasso. And on the way there from Broken Arrow, we had to stop the toll gate. So I had my hands bound, but I would hold them up to the cameras. Any cameras I could find, I would hold them up. Sadly, I was told later that they weren't able to see that. But, at the time, you're just going to do whatever you can. He told me we were going to pick up his trailer. He had a horse trailer. He'd converted into a concessions trailer. And we were going to get that. On the way there, I started crying and he asked me what was wrong. And I told him that I really wanted to see, I had a grandson who was 4 and one that was a newborn. I said, I really wanted to see my grandsons grow up. And he told me not to worry about that, that my sons would tell them all about me, that I wouldn't have to worry about them not knowing me. And that's when I knew for sure, he is taking me to kill me. So, Kellen, my faith, I was brought up in a home full of faith and my faith is strong. And I felt like I had done everything I could do. So, now it was up to God. So I prayed one of those foxhole prayers that you hear about, I prayed, I thank God for my life and for my family and my friends and the places I had been and the things I got to do. I mean, they wouldn't seem like big things to most people, but I really thoroughly enjoyed my life and my family. And then I asked God to, I got really serious with him. It wasn't an eloquent prayer. I asked him to send me 2 warrior angels. I said, I don't want you to take them away from a missionary that needs you, but I really need 2 warrior angels right now to come into this situation and rescue me. And I need him to believe anything I tell him. And after that prayer, I remember praying that even if this is how my life ends, even if this is it, I'm still grateful. I'm still thankful because I've led a good life. And Kellen, there's a peace. The Bible says it's a peace that passes all understanding. And we're not promised as Christians that it's going to be an easy walk. We're just promised he'll be with us. And if I could take that peace I felt at that moment, if I could take that and put it in a box, I would give it to everyone I meet. It is the most amazing peace. I knew then everything was going to be fine. I didn't know I was going to live, but I knew no matter what happened, it would be the way it was supposed to be. And after that, I wasn't panicked anymore. My heart didn't race anymore. It's as if, the Holy Spirit is our comforter. I've never felt comfort like that in my life. The Bible says, Christ gave us the Holy Spirit to be our counselor. And I believe that in that moment, that's exactly what I was experiencing. In the back of that truck, I didn't see hope, but I knew where my hope was. I love the songs we sing at church, praise and worship, and I couldn't think of one of them, not one of them. I don't know what's wrong with me, but at that time I couldn't think of any. So anyway, we picked up that horse trailer, and he told me the people who lived in the house were good people, and that if I made any noise to get their attention, that he would kill them. And I believed him. Picked up the horse trailer, and here it is, 2:30 in the morning in Owasso, and he said, there's a place I want to take you, but I'm not ready to take you there yet. I don't know why, but I need to think for a minute. And so I directed him in Owasso to a parking lot 1 block from the house where I'd raised my kids. Because I thought, I even at a time like this, I want something familiar. It's as close as I can get to my family right now. So that's what we did. In that parking lot for 3 hours, I finally went to sleep in the back of the truck. When I woke up, he was flipping through my phone, deleting pictures. I'd taken pictures of the truck he had when he came home to get his things in July. He was deleting that picture. I had begun dating a man. He was deleting those pictures. He was deleting text messages. I reached up. I don't know why. I mean, it has got to be the hand of God guiding. I reached behind the seat and put my hand on his shoulder, and I thanked him for coming back home to get me. I said, I thought you would never come home to get me. I thought you'd abandon me. And he shook his head, kind of like a dog would like shake off water. He shook his head, and then he looked at me again, and he shook his head, and he said, I think you just melted my heart. And, Kellen, it had nothing to do with me. I mean, that is the hand of God is what that is, changing his mindset. After that, I asked to go to the restroom. We went to Brahms to the restroom. He cut the zip ties from my ankles, my wrists, and they never went back on after that. He followed me into Brahms. He drugged me into Brahms. He stayed by the restroom. I tried to get the waitress's attention, the people behind the counter, they're oblivious. I've got, strap marks all on my wrists, and I'm pushing at my sleeves at the counter, and he's pulling down my sleeves at the counter. We leave there, and he said, I'm not ready to go where we need to go yet. He said, where else can we go? I need some time to think. So I said, how about Lowe's? It was next door. I said, a truck and a trailer don't look out of place at Lowe's. And he said, that's a good idea. So we went to the Lowe's parking lot. Now I had two reasons to go to Lowe's. The first is I was the human resource manager at Lowe's for almost a year, a couple of years back. And I knew their HR manager in there and I knew their protocols. And two, I knew my brother worked there. And so I knew if I could see him and get his attention or get their security person's attention, they would know me and they would know something was wrong with me. I mean, I'm not a pretty sight, okay? I've had 3 hours sleep in 2 days. Before that, my Fitbit was registering about 3 hours sleep a night. I've got on his sweatshirt, a big hoodie, and a pair of jeans and sneakers. So anyone that has seen me in a professional setting will know there's something wrong with me. I go into Lowe's to the bathroom a couple of times during the day, and I never could get anyone's attention. It's the craziest thing, no matter how hard I tried. There was a woman in the bathroom who worked there, and I almost asked her for help, but I was afraid she couldn't keep her composure. And I knew he was standing right outside the door. So, and since he told me he would kill whoever tried to help me, I just couldn't put her in that position. He had the revolver and the taser in his pocket, so I knew it was a threat that he would follow through on. We get back out to the trailer. It's around 2:30 in the afternoon. It's rainy. He's getting kind of anxious. And I asked him if we could reconcile. I knew that he was reaching a decision point. And I asked him if we could have a second chance, and could we reconcile and get married again? And he was happy to do that. I offered to go to our pastor, and he would not do that. I offered to go downtown City Hall. The City Hall in Tulsa is next to the police station. How handy is that? No, he didn't want to go there. So then I mentioned Siloam Springs. We'd been married 5 years before, and he liked that idea. So I told him my car gets better gas mileage, so we should take my car. See, his truck doesn't have a pipe pass, and my car does. So I don't have a comfort level with him, and I'm going to leave a trail as much as I can. So we go back to Walmart, and as any bride would want to prepare for her wedding day, I told him I needed some things. We left the house without my makeup, and I didn't have a clean shirt. And so we bought some things in Walmart, got in my car, and headed to Siloam Springs. At that time, my phone was laying in the middle of the console, and I just reached down and picked it up. And it's the first time I'd had my phone in the 20-something hours I've been with them. And he said, why does your phone keep buzzing? I said, it's my life group. It's life group night, and I'm supposed to bring ice, and they're trying to make sure I'm coming. And he said, well, you need to let them know you're not coming. So I did. I texted them that I was sorry I was tied up, and love them all, but I wouldn't be at life group. And then I said to him, my mom has a heart condition. I don't want her to worry when she can't find me. And he said, oh yeah, you need to let her know what's going on. So I text my mom. Randy surprised me last night and came home. Our love story is not finished, and I will talk with you tomorrow. And then I text the same thing to the man I was dating. He had used that phrase, our love story isn't finished, on sticky notes that I had shared with my mom and my boyfriend. So I knew they would know something was wrong. And they did. They both went to the Broken Arrow police station and filed a kidnapping report around 4:30 on Wednesday afternoon. So my mom texted me back, and she said, we're filing a kidnapping report. And I told her Siloam Springs and just deleted everything. On the way to Siloam Springs, there was a police officer, a highway patrol on the road, and I just knew he was there to get me, but he wasn't. He just stayed put. You start looking for signs. We had the 2 dogs with us, and so I said, we need to find a hotel that will take pets. And he said, oh, that's right. See if you can find one. So when I turned my GPS on to find a hotel that would take pets in Siloam Springs, that's when the Broken Arrow police were able to start tracking my phone. Now, here's a little known fact. They can track your phone. All it has to be is on. But they can't pinpoint anything without the GPS being turned on. My phone today, the location is always on my phone. Call it paranoia, but I'm keeping the location on because it worked for me that day. My mom told me later that until I turned that on, the police were tracking my phone off of the cell towers in Silent Springs to a very rural area out by a lake. So she said their concern was heightened until I turned the GPS on. We settled at the Holiday Inn there in Silent Springs. And we were in the room from around 6:30 or 7 until right at 9 o'clock. And at 9 o'clock, I had asked him, could we go get something to eat? And he said, yeah, that'd be great. And so we were getting ready to leave. And next door to us is a rec center. Like the hotel has an arcade, and kids kept making noise and throwing balls against the wall. And a knock came at the door. And I said, it's probably the kids next door. And he just walked to the door and opened it. He didn't even look through the peephole. And, I prayed for 2 warriors, Kellen. And right there were 2 Silent Springs police officers. So you wonder what warriors look like. I can tell you exactly what they look like. They asked who he was. They asked him to step out in the hall, and another one stepped in the room with me. He asked me if I was there against my will, and I couldn't answer him. And he asked me 3 different times. And finally, I told him he will kill me if I tell you the truth. And he said, if you don't tell me the truth, I can't help you. And I said, well, the truth is he's armed. Your police officer in the hall needs to know. He has a gun in his ankle holster. He's got a taser in his hoodie pocket, and he's got a gun in the other hoodie pocket. So he let him know with his microphone. I asked if I could call my mom. He said no. He asked me if I was against my will. I told him I couldn't answer that. He then stepped out in the hall, and the other officer came in, or another officer came in the room. And I lied to him. He said I could call my mom. And he said, oh, okay. So I called my mom, and I find out later she's standing in the middle of my living room holding her phone on speaker, and she's surrounded by several Broken Arrow police officers. In the meantime, they've all gone to my home and forced their way in. They can't figure out what's wrong because everything looks pretty normal at my house. And I tell her, what's happened, how he got in. I tell them about the taser marks. They were then able to go onto the carpet and pull up the taser tags. They had found the doors. He had duct taped the locks of the doors. They had found that and thought it was unusual. But I was able to give them instructions as to what happened. And Detective Garner, or Sergeant Garner, with the Broken Arrow Police, started talking to me. And he said, the police have him. And I said, yes, he's in the hallway. And he said, did you tell them what happened? And I said, I can't, he'll kill me. And Sergeant Garner, he testified later at trial. He's just an amazing police officer. He told me, you don't have anything to worry about. He said, if he comes near you, he said, I'm looking at 3 men who will take care of him. At the time, my 2 sons, my boyfriend, were standing with him. And he said, and I will loan them a shovel to take care of it. You are going to be fine, but you have to tell the truth. So I did at that time. They took him into custody, and I didn't see him again for a year until we reached trial. My 2 sons and boyfriend, who I'm now married to, drove to Silent Springs and picked me up and took me home. I was told the next day that he could be released on bond. He had told me he had $3,000 with him, that if he was arrested, that he would just bail out and for me to stay at the hotel and he would come back and get me. I did not stay at the hotel, and he did not bond out. Thankfully, the Broken Arrow detectives were able to get charges filed in Tulsa so that if he did bond out in Arkansas, they would have to keep him. At that time in the state of Arkansas, if you violate a protective order, you could be released on $50 bond without even seeing the judge. So it was a real fear. I can't say enough about the Broken Arrow Police and Ken Elmore, who at that time was the district attorney in Tulsa. I mean, they acted quickly. And if it weren't for them, I don't know what would have happened, but they extradited him in December back to Tulsa. And in January, the federal investigators got involved because of all the guns he had used throughout the crime, and it was crossing state lines. An ATF officer got involved, and it became a federal case. And kidnapping across state lines is a federal case. We were fortunate. The abduction happened in April of 17, and we went to trial in July of 19 or July of 18. And took a jury less than an hour to find him guilty. Midway through the trial, he fired his attorneys so that he could cross-examine me again. He filed an appeal since he was found guilty, and he said that he wasn't advised of everything he needed to be when he took counsel on his own. The 10th Circuit Court upheld that, and they allowed him a retrial. Now, I was very upset, more upset than you can possibly imagine. This was in the following May, but God's timing proves out, because in June, the McGirt Act became into effect. And because Randy was part Cherokee and my home was in technically the Cherokee Nation, Oklahoma, they were able to add 12 more charges to him for violating, using a gun in and out of Indian country, carjacking in and out of Indian country, kidnapping in and out of Indian country, assault in and out of Indian country. So with the additional 12 charges, we went to trial again last year, almost 4 years to the day it happened. We went to trial again that same week in April. And this time it took them, I think it was 3 hours to find him guilty on all charges. He appealed, of course. Found out yesterday, he appealed the sentence. He was sentenced to 39 years. And I found out yesterday that his appeal has been denied. So he will be 94 when he gets out of prison. All along, warriors that I prayed for kept showing up. It was 2 Siloam Springs police officers. The next morning after I got home, it was 2 Broken Arrow police detectives. We wound up in federal trial with Ryan Roberts and Jeff Gallant, 2 U.S. attorneys. I had 2 federal advocates, Kathy and Gable. I worked with 2 counselors. I mean, they just kept coming, Kellen. It was 2 after 2 after 2 after 2. It just kept coming. I don't think people realize, I didn't realize, the warriors that will stand behind you. If you will just come forward when you're going through a crisis, if you'll just come forward, help is there. But unless you've gone through something like that, you don't know the help is there. Even when I was going through it while I was working, I was hesitant to tell friends or coworkers everything that was happening. We try to be protective. We try to be leaders that we're supposed to be. But I heard a quote the other day that I wish I had heard then. And it was, if you'll let the cracks in your armor shine, or let the cracks show, the light will shine through. And I wish I'd heard that quote a couple of years ago, because, we're taught to, put on that brave face. But the truth is, it's okay not to have that brave face. Actually, you probably help more people by not having that brave face. So at the end of the day, he's in prison. He had been in Arkansas. I found out yesterday he's been transferred to North Carolina. So he'll be in North Carolina until the age of 94. And that's long enough for me. I don't believe injustice comes in this life, but I believe protection does. And I believe by him being in prison that, the general public as well as myself are protected. I don't believe I was the first one. that he did this to, but I am the last one he did this to, because God doesn't like him messing with his kids. He's a protective father, and he just should have known better, Kellen. He just should have known better.
Well, Lisa, that's just such a tough story to have to share, and you shared it so many times. And what I love about you went through trial, you went through mental torture, you went through suffering, but what you're doing with it, because so many people just need to ask for help and need to know what resources are available, or they need to know that there's hope on the other side of their trial. Can you share some of the things that you're doing now that you're out of that season?
Oh, yes. So I got home on a Thursday night, and Saturday morning I was in my counselor's office, and I told her good will come of this someday. It may not be right now, but someday good will come out of it. Since that time, I have been asked to speak at different conferences for the advocate training, talking about what my advocates did right, what I wish my advocates had said to me differently. I'm able to, in the workshops where they're able to earn CLEAT credit, I'm able to talk with police officers about, what they did right and what I wish they had done differently. I mean, it gives me a chance to brag on the police officers who were there. It gives me a chance to encourage them to reach out to people. I spoke recently to a group about, the employer's responsibility to domestic violence. No one wants to get in their employees' business. But Kellen, 42% of the women who are murdered in the workplace are done, they're killed by someone they know or someone they're related to. So, domestic violence comes to work. So if you're an employer, OSHA requires that you have a reasonably safe environment for your employees. And I think if you have any kind of conscience, if you suspect something like that's happening with your employee, I think you should ask. You don't have to be a professional counselor, but you can point them to resources that are. I mean, we all like to act like it's not happening, but it's happening. And I didn't look like your normal Lifetime movie victim. I mean, I just didn't. I'm not this, 5'8" skinny blonde bombshell who or a high school dropout who is on substance abuse treatment. I'm not any of those things. I was an educated professional living a good life when this was happening. And I can't help but wonder how many others, I mean, I know it happens to men as well, but I can't help but wonder how many others there are that we just don't know about. I mean, statistics tell us that if you know 50 people, you know someone who's in an unhealthy situation or unhealthy relationship. So through the workshops and then, which have been just phenomenal, I really enjoy doing those. I got to do the keynote speech for the VA last fall. They've asked me to come back and do a workshop again this fall. I love working with the Veterans Administration. Love the service that they've given to their country and that they continue to give. Because of the people I talk with at the conference, we want to keep in touch. So I established a website, surviveandthrive.com with Y's, SURVYVE, because as survivors, you're always asking why. And it's just, I try to put a blog out there once a month, but mostly we use it just to kind of keep in touch through the email. My husband and I have drawn up plans. We live on an acre of land and we've drawn up plans. We're going to build a safe house that we can offer up to the local authorities. I had a place to go for those 2 days while he was home packing. Not everyone has that. I understand they have shelters that can take women and children to in emergency situations, but I want there to be something local. So if someone needs to get out of the way or someone through their church gets word that someone needs a place to stay for a few days, I mean, we already have the cameras up. We already have the gates up. Why wouldn't we want to use that to help someone else? So I'm putting together an ebook of just survival strategies that I used. I used the bars that I would prop the door open with. I put up security lights. I got a home security system. I bought a dog. I mean, there are things we can do to protect ourselves. And I think, if you're going to file a protective order, do it with your eyes open and know what you're getting into. So I feel a heavy burden to share what I learned the hard way so that people don't have to go through that.
Yeah, I love that. You're so driven with purpose. I can't wait. I didn't know about the safe house thing. That's amazing.
Yeah. We are very excited about that. We're building onto our house, 2 in-law suites on each end of our house. And then towards the end of our property, we're going to build another 22 by 20. It's an efficiency safe house is what it is. Just something you never know when you need to just get away for a day or two.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, and I like, and I'm going to ask or I'm going to take this kind of an odd direction, but I have a meaning for doing it. So, I do the IT and the cybersecurity thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really the people become a victim, especially small businesses, when everything's been going good.
Right.
And they couldn't see the signs. They don't know what internally looks like when things are going sideways. And I see that for a lot of victims. Even in your story, what you're talking about is there started to be some signs and nothing bad's ever happened. And this person was kind before. And is there resources, or what are some good resources for, the community, but all women, to say, hey, I just need to understand how to start looking for these things and what healthy and unhealthy looks like, and just not be oblivious, so that maybe I can detect it early and not get myself into that situation? Are there resources for that?
Yes, the Tulsa Family Safety Center is actually connected to the Tulsa Police Department. It's downtown Tulsa, and it's phenomenal. And then the Cherokee Nation, the Creek Nation, they each have resources. You just contact their offices. But if you're in a tribe and you want to go outside of your tribe for help, Family Safety Center will talk to anyone. Just because you go there doesn't mean you're filing a protective order. I mean, they will counsel you, give you resources. They have brochures on, so you filed a protective order, here's what to do next. They have examples of safety plans that you can use. Or, most people don't realize their EAP, their Employee Assistance Program through their employer, when they're told those are confidential, I can tell you, I've administrated those plans several different places. They are truly confidential. We don't get the names of anyone that uses those services. But you can call the EAP, call the free counseling line, and ask those questions. I mean, there are resources out there that people can easily get.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm going to post this podcast in a short all over social. I'll have it up on our podcast streams. But I think what I'd like to do is do a couple follow-up posts with you. So I'll give you the content, but
Sure.
Just some awareness posts on all socials with those specific resources for everybody and the why behind it. I think because that's one of the things I even talked to my wife about. Too many people don't even know that these resources exist.
No, and more importantly, Kellen, we don't think we need them.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have told you I didn't need them. I mean, I've got this under control. I've got a protective order. I've got this under control. I've got God on my side. I've got this under control. I don't need to involve other people. I don't need to go for help. But I did need those things. It would have been nice if someone had handed me a brochure. I mean, they gave me a Family Safety Center card, that they'd taken one step further and said, by the way, here's a brochure you might want to look at. Or we're going to give you a ride now to the safety center. You don't have to file a protective order, but we think you should go talk to someone. I would have gone. I think I would have gone. So.
Well, Alisa, on your resources and the things that you're creating and the website, do you have a way, if somebody just wants to have a conversation, that they can get a hold of you if they have any questions?
Sure. The email address is on there. It's survive and thrive, all one word, with Y's, .com, at Gmail.